If you've lived in Western Washington for a while, you know things are changing like crazy right now. It's a lot to keep track of. So fortunately, one journalist at the Seattle Times is always crunching the numbers for us. Balk, the FYI guy, joins me now. Hello.
Hi.
I love the fact that you do this and you do it with data. So why do you do this? You sort of crunch data, but you reflect on life in the Northwest in a really meaningful way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. The column started actually as a blog. I started at the Seattle Times as a news librarian. I don't know if people know what that is, but
I do.
Yeah, large newspapers have kind of like a reference librarian who finds information and data for reporters,
Yeah.
and that's how I came to the Seattle Times, and I got this idea that there was so much more data than there used to be, and I got this idea that maybe I could write about just the data itself and about Seattle, and it kind of from there it became a regular part of the newspaper, and then I was promoted to a columnist a few years ago.
Which is wonderful because you've had a great touch at turning that into meaningful social math for us. We can see the data, but we can also see how it's reflected in our everyday lives. One thing that we can talk about that you studied were the rates of air conditioning in the area. Since it hit 91 yesterday,
Yeah.
I think that becomes more important. What did you find out?
Yeah, so there's a big national survey called the American Housing Survey that's conducted by the Census Bureau.
There's a graphic for it.
Okay, yeah, and so nationally, they ask people all across the country all this detail about their homes, and nationally, close to 90% of homes have some form of air conditioning. In Seattle, it's only 34%, so we are the lowest of any
Right.
metro area in the country. There's close to 1 million homes, including mine, in Seattle, that have no air conditioning.
How do you feel about that this summer?
It's been a little rough,
Yeah.
especially sleeping.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. I was kind of surprised. I moved here from New York City, and I heard basically people don't have air conditioning, and we were buying a house, and I thought, I'm getting air conditioning. And I'm really glad that I did, but I get it. I mean, is it getting warmer?
It is getting warmer, yeah.
It feels like the summer's hit 2 or 3 weeks of temperatures where it's hard to sleep.
For sure. I mean, I've only been here 15 years, but I've noticed the change.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. This column really stuck with me, being 30 in Seattle, what that's like now as opposed to the past. What did you find?
Yes, so a lot of things have gotten more difficult. That generation, the millennials, are often criticized as being a kind of entitled generation. People say they waste all their monny on going out to eat.
Can I just say that's not my experience with millennials,
Right.
but go ahead.
But they are criticized often. But if you look at the data like I did, you see that some things are a lot harder for them than previous generations. There are 3 big costs that have gone way up:
Right.
college, renting, and of course buying a house, and
Right.
they've all increased in cost much faster than the rate of inflation. So, and millennials are they're much more likely to have gone to college. They're a very well-educated generation. They're more likely to have gone to college than their parents.
Which means they're more likely to be in debt.
They're more likely to be in debt.
Just at the time when housing
Yeah.
is skyrocketing for them.
Right. I mean,
so what does this transfer into in terms of quality of life and the social mobility that we aspire to?
Yeah, well, I mean, for young people in Seattle, many of them feel like owning a home is just out of the question. It's just not going to happen. If they want to own a home, they're going to have to leave the area, and that's really sad. I mean, you go back to 1980, like I did in the column, and you see that the majority of young households were homeowners, 52%.
Yeah.
That's dropped down. It's now 30% and dropping.
It wasn't that hard when I was coming up, and now I can see, that it is really difficult. Do you get different responses from people based on their generations?
Oh yeah. Oh,
What
yeah.
do you hear?
Well,
I feel like we baby boomers we were supposed to stay cool forever, and I feel like we've turned into, the
well,
people.
I've heard from a lot of baby boomers some of whom are sympathetic, usually the ones who have kids at that age.
Know what the reality
know what they're
is.
going through. But others say excuses, and
No, it's math. It's math. Sorry, but changing demographics, what have you felt is most noticeable or most important for us to take notice of?
Well, the area has become much more diverse, and I wrote about this recently in a column, and it's a trend that's been going on here for a while, but it's really accelerated census data that came out this year showed, so the county grew by about 32,000 people last year. And the Asian population alone grew by 19,000, so more than half of the total growth in the county. And then after that, the Latino population grew by 6,000. After that, the black population, the multiracial, the white population only grew by about 1,600.
Do we know why this is?
You know, I never like to write about things that I can't explain, but this was a case where I don't, in terms of why the white population has slowed in its growth so much, I'm not exactly sure. The census data doesn't give us the components of the growth. So in other words, we don't know, you know, how many move here versus how many move away.
You just get the
net.
The net.
Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff, and I love reading you. Thanks for coming in and telling us about that. It's good to know that, you know, there's actual data behind what you might think is true or not true. We'll be back after this.